Let's say you did an iPad screen repair and afterwards the iPad no longer charges. What most likely happened is the battery connector itself got damaged. So as you can see here, there's a pin on the right that's bent, and that will cause charging issues. For example, it charges when the screen is on, but when you turn off the screen, it stops charging. Another scenario is that the battery screw was left out or the wrong screw was used, so the motherboard does not make good contact with the battery. That would also cause the same symptoms. And in today's video, I'm gonna walk you through how to replace the connector. Hi, I'm Jesse from VCC Board Repairs. Thanks a lot for joining us here on the channel. Make sure you hit that like button if you support the videos we do here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this, and share this video with all your friends. Don't forget to check out the links down below in the description if you want to get any of the tools I used in today's video. And I'll have cool t-shirts like this one, Keep Calm and Fix Phones. So let's go ahead and get started with replacing this battery connector and get this iPad charging. So here we have the iPad. I want to show you guys the symptoms so you can recognize them, so next time you come across this, you'll know what to check for. So the first thing is, right now I have the iPad plugged in and it's charging, and here on the upper left, the green number, that is the USB charging current. This is the number that tells you how much juice is being pulled into the iPad to charge the battery. And you'll see the number right now is 0.64-ish amps. I turn on the screen and you see that charging current jumps up to 1.7, 1.8 amps, which is a more healthy expected charging current. I lock the screen and it drops down. So if you see this type of behavior, most likely is one of the issues I mentioned, the battery connector, the battery screw. Also, the numbers will vary depending on your iPad. If the iPad is old, the battery is worn out, it might not charge as high. If the battery is full, it also won't charge as high. Or also depending which pin itself is damaged, might give you a different reading, but the concept's the same. It charges when it's awake at full, like almost full amps, 1.8, 2.0 amps, and it drops down once you lock the screen. One other thing, I do want to show you how to check to see if the battery is screwed in right. So what happens is sometimes people don't screw this in all the way, and what you'll notice is if you push down on the connector, this might be hard to see on the camera, but you'll feel some travel, meaning the board can still move up and down within that screw post. And that means someone didn't screw in the screw all the way, or the screw is too long. Like if you mix up your screws, the screw might be too long where it doesn't pull down the board towards the battery. So you would have to tighten it real tight and then push to see if there's any travel between the board and the battery, and that will tell you if it was just a screw issue. And then you test again and check the charging current to see if that fixed it. And then lastly, you do want to visually check the pins to see if they're damaged on the battery connector. So take out the battery screw. I already removed some of the adhesive here, so it lifts pretty easy, but you should put some isopropyl alcohol, and then you're able to kind of lift the board like this, and then you should be able to look in there and see, you should be able to see 3 straight pins in here. If not, if you see one that's missing or it's off, then take out the board and do a full visual inspection, which we're gonna do right now. And before I forget, one thing is a lot of people would mistakenly call these symptoms PMIC, that is the power management IC chip. And in most cases, if it happened after a screen repair, it's not gonna be PMIC, or it's very unlikely. PMIC will give you different symptoms where it charges when the battery is dead. So once it boots, the charging current, what I've seen is 0.013 amps, and it stays fixed there, does not go above 1%. So if you see those specific symptoms, then maybe it's PMIC, especially if it happened on its own versus after a screen repair. But in this case, as you can see, here's the battery connector. So from this side is the top side, and then on the bottom, you'll see these are the pins on the battery connector. And iPads have different amount of pins, but in general, you have 2 large set of pins. This is the positive and negative to charge the battery. And then these smaller pins here are data pins. This is how the battery talks to the motherboard to tell it the temperature, and just different data about it, the battery health and whatnot. So if any of these pins are damaged, you will see weird charging behavior. really low current, or like you saw earlier where the screen, where it charges when the screen is off or on, but not when it's off. So maybe you might get lucky and be able to bend this into place, but from my experience, they often break or they just keep misaligning. So let's go through the process of actually swapping out the connector so you guys could learn that process. So in this case, the battery connector, I already have one here. So you guys can see what is actually, how this is actually soldered on. So we flip this over, there's actually some pins here. So the metal frame has, let's see, 1, 2 solder joints, and then the pins themselves have some connections here at the opposite side of the pins, the visible pins. So we got to find these from underneath the board and expose them, and then we're gonna do some soldering. So this is all hidden under the sticker, which we need to peel off. And some models is a lot easier. Now this board specifically is an iPad Air 2, but the concept is the same across all iPads. They all basically suffer from the same issue where technicians will slide a tool underneath the battery connector to, disconnect the battery. I don't recommend that. I recommend you just lift the board by putting a tool to the side of it. The goal is to just create a gap of air between these pins and the battery. That will disconnect the battery. Now, if you don't disconnect the battery, you have a high chance of blowing the backlight when plugging in the LCD, because a lot of people, they'll just kind of, when they go to install the screen, they often just kind of rub the connector across until it kind of lines up, and that's how you can blow a backlight. You get a surge of current when you bridge the wrong pins together as you're rubbing the connector across. Okay, so there you go. So if we bring back this is how it goes. So you can see the anchors here for the metal frame, and then the 2 data pins and the large positive and negative for the battery charging. So the trick here is to get some flux. This is Amtech NC559 ASM. I buy this from Engineer Gadgets, link down below in the description. And then what I do is I'll tin all the solder joints using my low melt solder. This is 138 solder. You could find it, I'll link that below as well. It's called the Mechanic X Solder X wire or something like that. It's like 138 temperature. Let me turn on my fume extractor. All right, so just essentially I'm adding my own solder onto the connector so that it lowers the overall melting point. Because right now from the factory it's like 223, I believe, whereas this solder is 138 Celsius. So mixing them together brings down the overall melting point. Also, I add solder to the pins. So this connector done is destroyed. It's gonna be replaced, so no need to be careful with it. So I like to add as much solder everywhere, like that. All right, so now that this is flooded with solder, what we're gonna do is I'm going to lift up the board using some coins off to the side. You guys look at the bottom left camera, I have right here 2 coins. I might have to, I think it should be enough clearance down here. Essentially the goal is to melt the solder from the top from here and then push the connector down so it falls off. So I am going to put my hot air to, let's go to 120 air and 425 Celsius. Let's start with that. So I'm using a quick hot air station. So just heat. One thing I keep in mind is the ground pin takes the longest to melt. So the ground pin is, I believe this one seems to have melted longer. Also these anchor points here on the side. And essentially just heat this board. Hit the connector. You can try to push down gently. I've also used my iron to push down on the pins, but let me see if I get this to come off like this. And the reason why I'm going in circles is to evenly hit the area so that no one point is like super hot. If I spread the heat, it will basically melt everything together. Alright, this is not melting. So what I'm going to do is add more flux. So the hot air burns away the flux, so you got to keep adding it if it doesn't, if you're on there too long. And I'm going to add some more solder to my iron. And I'm going to try it again. So using my iron on the pins, kind of just double teaming this connector. Like I mentioned, the connector, no need to keep it nice as long as it comes off. Also, we want to make sure the heat transfers to the shields or the housing of the connector. So that metal bracket around it is also, a ground plane, so it takes a lot of heat. So yeah, the connector is off. So let me put this out to the side. Let me clean this up. There's a lot of burnt flux here. So these are pretty handy. They're little, it's kind of like a Q-tip, except the tip is not like fiber, it's like a little towel. So I found these pretty handy. I'll link those below in the description as well. Alright, so once you get this off, the nice thing is super easy to actually install the new one. So first we got to clear out these anchor holes. So using some wick, we got to wick out as much solder as we can. Although iPad boards are a huge heat sink, so it's not always easy. So I'm trying to wick whatever I can from here, from the top layer with my iron, which doesn't seem to be powerful enough. So now I'm going to use my hot air again. Let's go with this one here on the upper right. So just kind of rub the braid, and the hot air should hit the wick and the solder joints. And you see it suck that right up. Same here. Same here. Alright, so the flux has burned away, and also my solder wick is full of solder already, so I'm gonna clip that off and then kind of shove the wick, scoot it down, and now we have a new fresh piece. Alright, so I need some here and here. So basically same thing. You want to clear out the little anchor holes here as well, and there you go. You can see through all the different that one's actually a little, there's still some solder in there. It's kind of hard to see, but I'm gonna clip off the end of this solder wick because you can see it's kind of frayed, which makes it difficult to suck up the solder. So I'm gonna go like this. All right, there you go. So now this is all basically ready to go. Well, let me clean the other side. Also keep in mind, on this model there is a sim tray here, so you got to be mindful of that when you're soldering. You don't want to use too much heat because you could affect the sim tray here. Also, you can see none of the stickers over here are melted, so it means the heat did not over penetrate to the other side, which is a good sign. Alright, so now to install the new connector. This is my favorite part just because of how simple it is. Now we're going to install the connector, and essentially, if you remember what it looked like on the outside, let's put the board right over it. There you go. You can see all the pins aligned with, even the plastic little alignment pole is right there. One thing to keep in mind is make sure you get the right connector. There are 3 variations of this of iPad connectors. So there's 2 that look virtually the same, but they're slightly different. And then the iPad Pros have they have like 3 and 2 pins on each side. So yeah, just add some flux. And we're basically done. Just add some solder wire. So I'm gonna put it here near the connector. And what I'm gonna do is I'm basically just gonna push down so that the connector is kind of pushing up through the pins. And I'm using now regular 183 Celsius solder wire. All right, this is a ground pin because it's taking a lot more, requires more heat. So this is 183 Kester 6337, I believe. I always forget the number. The goal is to just get a blob of solder through there. Also make sure you don't bridge these pins together. If you bridge the data pins, then you're gonna have issues. And it's super easy because they're so close to each other. All right, so let's clean this up one more time. Alright, so now I got my little clean cloth here. Just get some final. Also make sure you don't damage the pins again. I just noticed I've been pushing on them slightly. Alright, so here's what the anchors look like. There's no bridging. You could also diode mode the pins just to see if and making contact. But also you can look at it from the side. Make sure the connector is sitting flush with the motherboard. If there's a gap here, there's a gap between the connector and the board, there's going to be issues where the battery cannot reach the pins or something like that. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. See if it solved the issue, if we see different symptoms than before. All right, so we have the iPad assembled and now we have it plugged into charge, and you can see it's charging at 1.9 amps. So let's wait to see if it gets to the home screen and then do the test again where we lock the screen, unlock it, and see if the charging current changes. So now you see it at 2 amps. Lock the screen and it's still 1.8 amps. So it pretty much doesn't change, whereas before it was dropping below 1.0. So it was like a point something. In some cases you'll actually see it like 0.3 or 0.1, like really low. But now you can see, now that it's fixed, it is charging regardless. So this proves to you that the battery connector was the issue and is also fixed. Also, another symptom I forgot to mention is sometimes the battery level will be all over the place. So right now it is at 16%. So if you have a damaged battery pins, you might get battery percentages that are jumping all over the place. But in this case, it looks like it's fully working and the connector issue is solved. All right, so there you have it. The iPad is now fixed. Charging issue is solved. So let me know what you guys think about my new camera. I just set it up today here in my workbench and I think it looks pretty good, but I won't know until I upload it on YouTube and then you get your guys' feedback. So let me know in the comments if you guys notice a difference in the quality. Don't forget to hit that like button to let me know that you appreciate these tutorials on how to fix stuff, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this video with all your friends. If you see this post in the Facebook groups about an iPad that doesn't charge after a screen repair, this is a video for them. And don't forget the links down below in the description. Like I have cool shirts like this one, Keep Calm and Fix Phones, and some other repair shop related shirts. And I will link all this in my site down below, where I have every tool I use. And if there's any other tools you want me to talk about or review or just link, let me know in the comments as well. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next week.